And it is time to bring in our State House Insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Joel Sawyer, our Republican strategist tonight. Let's begin with the death of Senator John Scott, the 69-year-old passing away on Sunday. His funeral service is taking place this weekend. Antoine, a big loss over at the State House. He had more than 30 years of public service there.
Well, my thoughts and prayers are with Lady Scott, the entire Scott family, Senate District 19, and all those who've ever been touched by the life and the service of my dear friend and mentor, Senator John L. Scott Jr. You don't make it 33 years in Democratic politics in Richland County without having touched someone's life and having made an impact in some way, shape, or form. And I think when it's all said and done and the ink dries on the pages of history about the state of South Carolina, the impact that Senator John L. Scott made will be in multiple pages of history about South Carolina. He, in my opinion, was one of the big reasons why we have the South Carolina Education Lottery. When I think about his legacy with historical Black colleges and universities and all the fights he's taken on throughout his career as a county council person, as a member of the South Carolina General Assembly, and just as a community leader, I am so proud that my life was both impacted and touched by his service, but also by his time here on earth.
Yeah, I think I would just echo a lot of what Antoine said in terms of some of the significant accomplishments that he was a part of, including the South Carolina Education Lottery, and just to I think really echo what Antoine said about community service and about really truly being like a servant of the community and making sure that he was there looking out for Richland County. Really, never went to the state house, but really never forgot who he was there to represent and making sure that he always looked out for his community first. It will certainly be a loss.
I want to move on to the presidential race now. Robert Kennedy Jr. campaigning across the state of South Carolina for the Democratic nomination for president. Antoine, is this a done deal? Is Biden lock things up in South Carolina, or does Kennedy have a shot here?
Well, I think it's very important to know that it was South Carolina that serves as both the political rehab for candidate Joe Biden, as well as the launch pad for candidate Joe Biden. So anyone else who thinks that somehow or another their activities in the state is going to change the hearts and minds of the people in the Palmetto State, I think are sadly mistaken. At the end of the day, I think anybody in the Democratic preference primary who's moving around is moving around to be a simple distraction. We have one of the most consequential presidents in modern day history when you think about the legislative accomplishments. And there's not a constituency in this country who have not benefited from the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration, including my dear Republican friends who live in the state of South Carolina. So we will go through these motions and these activities called the presidential preference primary to some degree. I'm looking forward to solidifying Joe Biden as our nominee once again and taking on whomever Joel and his party decides to nominate.
Joel, Kennedy has basically said here he doesn't believe he's getting a fair shake here with the Democrat Party being censored in some areas, he believes. And what's your take on that? Do you think he's getting a fair shake when it comes to the presidential primary?
Hey, look, it's going to be very difficult for someone challenging an incumbent from their own party, to get any kind of traction. I think that it's fair for a party to decide as a party that they're going to support the person who is currently in the White House. I mean, you saw Republicans do that with Trump in 2020. They straight out canceled the Republican presidential primary in 2020. Back in 1996, if you want to go way back, when Clinton was an incumbent president, there was a guy named Lyndon LaRouche who was running for the Democratic presidential nomination. The same kind of like outsider vibe. Then DNC chairman Don Fowler canceled Democratic presidential preference primaries across the country, including the one here in South Carolina. So, is it fair? I don't know if I'm the arbiter of what's fair or not, but I mean, it should not be surprising that anybody looking to challenge an incumbent president in their own party is going to have a very, very steep hill to climb.
And Joel, moving on to the Republican presidential debate that's scheduled for next week. We still don't know if the former President Trump is going to take part in that debate. If he doesn't, Who stands to gain the most here in South Carolina? Would it be Senator Tim Scott or former Governor Nikki Haley?
Well, I don't think it's just them. I would say, anybody on that stage who is not named Donald Trump, and all indications are right now that he is probably not going to be on that stage. Look, I mean, all of these folks have a chance to make a name for themselves. I think that Ron DeSantis is desperately looking to shore up his campaign. Ramaswamy is looking to continue to get his name out there. And I think Haley and Scott are looking to find kind of what their lane is going to be in the primary. The biggest thing I think with debates is that they are very little reward for a whole lot of risk. I don't think the debates necessarily are going to move a ton of people into your camp, but they certainly have the potential to move people out of your camp if you do not present yourself well, or that you have some kind of gaffe moment in that.
I think Joel is spot on. At the end of the day, former President Donald Trump has sucked all of the oxygen out of the political room. And so you have multiple candidates who, in my opinion, are on political life support, trying to find energy and oxygen for survival in the Republican preference primary. And truth be told, whether Trump is on that stage or not, he is going to control the conversation. And what I think the political class has to come to grips with is that he's running a campaign without running a campaign. Every time there's an indictment, every time there's conversation around the indictments, every time there's conversation around the Republican primary, he dominates the conversation. He does not have to spend a dime, and there is 35 to 37% of the Republican preference or primary preference voters who will not move. And the more the conversation is around him, the more his name ID raises, and the less time and the less opportunity for downstream candidates have in order to raise their profile. And so I think I think all of them are catching hell. And when you have a no-name Republican candidates like Scott and Haley, to some degree, no disrespect to them, running in a primary with their bigger names and bigger games, I think it's even tougher for them to climb the leader to be the president of the Republican Party, because that's the first step in order to being president of the United States.
All right. Antoine C. Wright, Joel Sawyer, guys, thank you so very much for your time. And for more on what's going on in the world of politics and over at the State House anytime, simply go to our website. That's WLTX.com.